Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Sometimes one of the best ways to be a pastor is to be open to what God puts in front of you. More often than not, I find myself oblivious until I stumble over God's plan and realize what is happening when I pick myself up. However, that wasn't true when it came to the Gravedigger. This week following All Saints Sunday, I'm sharing some small parts of the numerous encounters I've had over a succession of years with a gravedigger. Our conversations became powerfully meaningful for both of us, I believe. I know they did for me. We talked about life and death and God, and every time he left me with an image that, while what he showed me seemed unremarkable, what he saw through his eyes of faith opened my own eyes to the gifts of God and God with us, especially in times of sorrow and loss. And the odd thing was, it seemed like God kept throwing us together. The stories today come from encounters I had with him in two different cemeteries, both many miles from where I sit this morning. One I have been in very often, and one I've been in only a couple of times. The first one came as Nan and I were visiting the grave of a relative who had died. There's a small office and a community room in a house in this cemetery, and as we stood over the grave, I felt eyes on me, and I looked, and over on the porch of the house was the gravedigger in a wheelchair. Nan said, "Go." And I went. And then the two of us began to make our way along the road around the cemetery, talking as I walked and he rolled. Eventually, after a pause in our long discussion we were having, he said, "I like this road, Reverend." I thought about how many times I had complained about its rough spots and its potholes, but the gravedigger had continued speaking. "It goes all the way around the cemetery," he said. "Every grave is included." He paused. "It reminds me of God's embrace." By now the circle was taking us back toward the building and to where I had left Nan, but then suddenly he stopped rolling. "Look there, Reverend," he said, pointing. I didn't notice anything unusual I was supposed to see. "Right there, Reverend. See that anthill?" I looked, and sure enough, just inside the curb, only a foot or two away, there was a fire ant mound. He said, "There's millions of ants in there. They're all going about their business, building, eating, digging. Here we are looking over that mound, and they don't have any idea we're here." I looked at it, wondering where this was going. He smiled at me. "Isn't it that way with us and God?" I smiled and patted him on the back. "Oh, yes, indeed," I said. "How often we forget about God or ignore him or just are so busy with life that we don't think about him." "But he's always there," the gravedigger said. "His arms around us," I answered. I've been in that cemetery several times since, and I smile every time as I look at that pothole-filled road. I remember God's arms around me and around us all. Another time I was in a cemetery pretty far away, attending a funeral for a church member's family. It was a beautiful, crisp fall day, and before getting back in the car to head home, I decided to walk around the lake that was there. Halfway around, there he was. He was visiting his granddaughter who lived nearby and had come to the lake to fish, although he didn't have any bait. Really, he was just out enjoying the day. Once more, our conversation turned to issues of God, life, death, and new life. I tried to offer some wisdom, but with him it so often seemed that I missed the point, and usually he had some wisdom for me. It was no different this time. "Reverend," he suddenly said, "see all those colors?" I looked over to the trees where he was pointing and saw all the reds and golds and yellows. "Most people like the colors the best," he said, "and I like them too. People look at the trees now, Reverend, but all those years when I was digging graves, I noticed nobody ever looks at the trees during the winter." "But they're dead," I said, puzzled. "Yes, sir," he said. "That's when you can see 'em best. They point to God. When they're dead, we can see. They point toward heaven." Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.